Yeah, hi folks. Now, without question, our present socialist government under the leadership of Comrade Ardern would have to be the most corrupt, incompetent government New Zealand has ever seen. While our hospitals are falling apart and our nurses are being forced to strike for a vitally needed pay rise, this government is wasting billions on creating a new health system which includes a separatist Maori health authority. But it gets even worse, folks.
A colossal cost blowout has seen the government scrap 6 of its promised 32 transport projects. Gone the second stage of an upgrade of the dangerous section of State Highway 2 from Te Puna to Omokoroa in Bay of Plenty. And in Northland, an extension of the State Highway from Whangarei to Port Marsden is gone, although a rail upgrade will still go ahead. In Auckland, gone a major extension of the Mill Road Highway deemed too expensive. The second stage of an upgrade from Papakura to Drury is gone, despite extensive housing development along that corridor.
Anyway, I'll just fast forward a bit.
First, here's Katie Bradford with Who's Missing Out.
A familiar long weekend sight, long lines of traffic as people head to the Bay of Plenty. Risky behaviour means this section of road from Te Puna to Omokoroa is a crash hotspot.
Primarily safety, but also congestion, unpredictable journey times when it comes to hospital appointments, needing to get to work or school. This intersection, as part of that stage 2 that's been cancelled.
Yeah, now folks, I don't know if you know much about this intersection or not, but it is completely blind, it is lethal, it's a killer, and they've cancelled it. Anyway, I'll fast forward again.
But the cancellation of 2 South Auckland projects are a blow to one of the city's fastest growing areas.
The Mill Road project has tripled in cost.
There has been business case after business case on Mill Road. It has had the highest value to cost ratio of any project.
The government says it's about shifting away from roads and towards public transport.
There's very little east-west public transport. And if you're a tradie, then the train or the bus isn't going to work for you.
But this area heading south towards Drury is ripe and ready for development, with thousands of new houses planned.
And a large number of houses were going to be lost as a result of the development, approximately 800.
Yeah, so we have more road deaths and 800 houses less. But look on the bright side, folks. This is what we get.
So there are plans for a second harbour crossing, but only if you're on 2 feet or 2 wheels. Stretching between West Haven and Northcote Point, the Northern Pathway would let people walk or cycle across the harbour to get from the North Shore to the central city. At a cost of around $785 million, including the cost of the land, it's expected to take 5 years to build.
And this just so happened to happen 5 days earlier.
An estimated 1,500 cyclists broke through a police barrier onto the Auckland Harbour Bridge today in a protest that brought traffic to a crawl. As Simon Mercet reports, they say the Transport Agency isn't listening to their calls to open the bridge to cyclists.
This was the start of a big Sunday ride over the Harbour Bridge, and an unauthorised one. Several cyclists moved around the side, police unable to hold them back. Then the barrier was breached. Many hundreds waited to follow the leaders, and so a huge bridge crossing was underway.
Yes, completely illegal and clearly staged by Jacinda Ardern.
Some cycled, some walked, and soaked up the view. The cyclists got close to the North Shore, then headed back. And so for the middle of the day, the Harbour Bridge became a dual-purpose transport route. The bike ride followed an earlier rally at nearby Point Erin Park.
Make it safe and unmolested, and the riders will come across the Harbour Bridge in their thousands.
Like Auckland wants Waka Kotahi, the transport agency, to approve a trial bike lane on the bridge this coming summer.
But let me tell you...
Jacinda's buddy, Julianne Genter, inciting people to break the law.
It is going to happen. You are on the right side of history, and what it's going to take now is people power.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
That may have sounded like a call to action, but...
Well, of course it was. So I wonder why Facebook hasn't cancelled her when she's using the same language as Trump.
Donald Trump will remain off Facebook and all its platforms for at least 2 years. Suspended since the January riot at the Capitol, the social media giant has now slapped the former US president with its severest penalty, one that he calls an insult to his voters. US correspondent Anna Burns-Francis reports.
It was the storming of the Capitol that led to the silencing of a president.
But hold on.
Former President Donald Trump tonight declared not guilty of the impeachment charge he incited insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th.
Not guilty because it didn't happen.
How bad was the January 6th white supremacist QAnon insurrection in Washington? Well, it was bad, but it keeps getting worse. Just on Friday, CNN informed us that that day was actually worse than 9/11 and Pearl Harbor.
Good evening. 150 days since the worst single act of political violence since the Civil War, and the man who incited it is crying about being kept off social media.
The worst single act of violence since the Civil War. Anyone read anymore? Cindy Cortez can't read, but she can feel. She feels deeply. She's very easily traumatized. She was nowhere near the white supremacist QAnon insurrection when it happened, but to this day, she's got PTSD from it.
You have this transition period of escalating violence, which really culminated on the 6th, for which, you know, was an extraordinarily traumatizing event that's not really being discussed. It's politically sensitive. You know, no one wants to say, oh, boo-hoo. But there are members of Congress that served in war.
So you're doing therapy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm doing therapy, but also I've just slowed down. I think the Trump administration had a lot of us, especially Latino communities, in a very reactive mode.
Imagine being that girl's therapist. I mean, you're paid to listen to people talk about themselves. Your job is to absorb narcissism. That's how you make a living. But at some point, you got to say, please stop talking about yourself. Please stop complaining just for a second. They tell us we need to get to the bottom of what happened during the white supremacist QAnon insurrection of January 6th. But what's so interesting about it is that the government, despite calling for openness, has still not released thousands of hours of surveillance video from that day. Interesting. So if it was the worst day of political violence since the Civil War, says the historically illiterate CNN anchor, why won't they show us the pictures? Julie Kelly is one of the very few journalists who's looked into this. Here's some of the video that she obtained from January 6th.
The police here are willing to work with us and cooperate peacefully, like our First Amendment allows. Gather more Americans under the condition that they will come and gather peacefully to discuss what needs to be done to save our country. This must be peaceful.
This has to be peaceful. We have the right to peacefully assemble.
Poor Sandy Cortez probably speed dialing her therapist right now. The Senate has released its report on that day. Julie Kelly has read it. She's with American Greatness. We're happy to have her join us tonight to to tell us what's in it. Julie Kelly, thanks so much for coming on. What's in this report?
Well, it's interesting, Tucker, because it basically really blames the U.S. Capitol Police, who we are told were heroes similar to the heroes who stormed the beach in Normandy and, you know, all other terrorist attacks, the people who were there helping that day. But it turns out that U.S. Capitol Police were not prepared, did not have a plan, ignored warnings that there could be violence that day. But obviously, the story now is that the U.S. Capitol Police officers, so many are also so traumatized, just like AOC, that they want $4.4 million to open up a wellness and trauma center to help work through all their feelings about what happened that day.
Are you being serious? I wonder, can a country where federal employees are this silly, can it kind of continue? I mean, for real. Okay. So the Capitol Police, we know that the one gunshot fired that day was from a Capitol policeman who killed an unarmed protester. Now,
yes, the protesters killed no one that day, which makes the incident no different than the Harbour Bridge protest.
We kind of instinctively take the side of the police in these things, all things being equal, but we still don't know why, because we've never seen the report, and we don't know who, we don't know the name of the cop who did that. Are we ever going to find that out?
I don't know. I think her family is trying to find out. I'm not really sure why we don't have more Republican officials, Republican leaders in Washington demanding to know the name, the identity of that officer, demanding to see the investigation we were told was performed, conducted, and closed about what happened to Ashley Babbitt. But look, the U.S. Capitol Police, really, they are the ones you were just referring to, the 14,000 hours of surveillance video they have just from noon to 8 o'clock on January 6th. They will not release that footage. They don't even want defendants to see it. They don't want defense attorneys to see that footage, because I think we'll see more of what you just showed, Tucker, that clip about how so many protesters were let in. They were talking to Capitol Police officers. We know they were taking selfies.
Exactly.
Gone from the White House and then gone from social media.
They're silencing people. They're silencing a certain voice. And I don't just mean my voice.
But it's his voice specifically, banned by Facebook and Instagram for at least the next 2 years.
I think there'll be tremendous litigation because it makes it very unfair.
The social media giant suspended Donald Trump indefinitely after the January riot. Last month, its oversight board backed the ban but called for a time limit. Now, Facebook's announced that's until January 2023.
Doesn't matter whether you are the Pope, the President of the United States, whether you're an ordinary user, you cannot use Facebook if you want to use Facebook in a way which leads to real-world imminent harm. And
What's your response to this exertion of big tech power?
Yes, Mark Zuckerberg sent out one of his vice presidents, the vice president for global affairs, a man called Nick Clegg, who today announced that we believe his, Donald Trump's, actions constitute a severe violation of our rules, which merit the highest penalty available. Many of your viewers will be wondering who this creep and cretin is. I know. I've followed this creep and cretin, Nick Clegg, for many years. He used to be our deputy prime minister in the country of my birth, Great Britain. He was chucked out by the British electorate because he was wildly unpopular. He was then chucked out by his own constituents, so that he wasn't even in the House of Commons. But now he gets to say what a former president of the United States can say, where and when. So in some ways, I congratulate him for his enormous global upgrade from total failure in his land of birth to deciding who can say what across the globe. It's an amazing, amazing promotion.
Yeah, but don't worry, folks. Revenge is coming.
Oh, our overlords at Facebook are at it again, announcing today that President Trump will be banned from their platform until at least January 7th, 2023. That date is significant because it conveniently prevents Trump from posting anything leading up to the 2022 midterms, which I believe could be the biggest midterm election in our country's history. And of course, Team Biden, led by head propagandist Jen Psaki, is now taking a victory lap.
I think as we look at it, we learned a lot from President Trump, the former president, over the last couple of years about his behavior and how he uses these platforms. It feels pretty unlikely that the zebra is going to change his stripes over the next 2 years. We'll see.
Well, it's very interesting that I feel the same way about Joe Biden as the zebra that's never going to change his stripes. She's annoying, that lady, I have to say. For all the sniveling reports from the media now coming out of that room you just saw there, claiming President Trump is politically dead, they are certainly going to unprecedented lengths to make sure that he's canceled. So what is President Trump's reaction to the continuation of the ban? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Senior Advisor to President Trump, Jason Miller. Jason, great to see you again.
Grant, good evening.
So, what does the president say? I gotta believe. Does he even care?
Well, this really didn't surprise us at all. I mean, I know Facebook came out and said, hey, it's going to be another 2 years. The reality is it's going to be February of 2030 until they let him back on the platform. They're never going to let him back on the platform. This is an effort by the big tech oligarchs, by the liberals in Silicon Valley, by the media, by the Democrats. But I know, I repeat myself, they're all basically the same thing. They never want to let him get back on. That is why President Trump is developing his own social media program. And I think again, I know the media is attacking him and trying to dunk on the president and saying, okay, we'll believe it when we see it. Well, let me just tell you something very special is coming, and President Trump will be back. And as we saw from recent polling, over 60% of folks who voted for President Trump will go and follow him to a new platform. So we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 40+ million people who could sign up on a new platform. That we're excited about, but they're going to try to keep deplatforming and censoring conservatives. That's the new normal, sadly, in America.
Jason, is there a timeline for it? Everybody's eager for it to come out.
So short answer is yes. I think this summer, I think is realistic. I'd say at the very short end, maybe 4 to 6 weeks from now. At the long end, I'd say at the absolute latest, probably somewhere in the Labor Day range. But definitely over the summer. Could potentially see even as close as 4th of July. That might be pushing things just a little bit. But the good news is there are some things that are being developed. They're in the beta testing phase. President Trump needs to make a final decision on what direction he wants to go. I think he's taken somewhere in the neighborhood of 24, maybe 30 different pitches and presentations. But what he's going to come out with is going to be very special. And Grant, I promise you, I'm not just blowing smoke at you. This will knock your socks off.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.